So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Ponytail. So let's start the series. In the depths of an ancient woodland, all was silent. No sounds could be heard, not even from the animals. A distant flicker of movement was visible as it passed through the trees. A shadow darts from the undergrowth to another tree. A person wearing light armor and an animal mask that obscures his face. A small toddler is in his arms. Blonde hair was tousled by the wind, and wide blue eyes darted about in terror. A blast occurs in their vicinity, causing the man and the person he is responsible for to drop to the ground. As soon as the Hardy's feet hit the ground, the masked man bolts toward a rock formation. He quickly halts beside the huge stones, noticing a tiny opening that is just big enough for the boy. Naruto, pay attention to what I say. He spoke to the child in a strong voice to keep the boy's attention. It is necessary for you to conceal yourself. Stay hidden and don't emerge until I send Pakun to fetch you. In ordnung. The toddler with blonde hair nodded and climbed into the hole. The masked man subsequently rotated a kunai in each of his hands. 3 individuals dressed in black arrived, wearing traditional shinobi outfits that concealed all features. The masked man rushed ahead, and they responded in kind. Only for the masked man to disappear and reappear behind the central figure, plunging the small knife into his skull. The other 2 quickly distanced themselves from the masked man, both of their hands moving rapidly. Upon landing, they activated the techniques. One sent a wind blade toward the masked man's head, while the other called forth multiple spikes from the ground beneath him. The masked man contorted his body in a display of agility that even the most elite gymnast would envy. The spike narrowly missed him, and the gusts of wind were not strong enough to harm him. With one of the spikes as leverage, he propelled himself toward the wind user. The man attempted to dodge but was met by the masked ninja, who intercepted him amid a flurry of leaves. As the wind user descended to the ground of the woods, he turned to confront his last adversary and saw the latter completing the hand seals for yet another world technique. The world user brought his hands down hard onto the ground, and as the masked man attempted to evade, he heard a crunch beside him. There, the cave where he had concealed the child was now caved in. The masked man emerged from nowhere behind the world user and, with a lightning-encrusted fist, punched through his chest. From him came an unhinged bellow of elemental rage. Rist zijn hand los aan zog snel een schriftrol herver mit der einhundemut herberief. He pointed a finger at the now collapsed cave and shouted, Naruto has been buried alive, dig him out immediately. The man stepped aside while his dogs went to work. He would have offered more help, but they are much better suited to this task than he is. His ears detect the rustling of leaves, indicating that he would soon have company. Hund. What occurred? A new character emerged next to the masked figure, now identified as Dog. The newcomer was an elderly gentleman encircled by 5 others wearing masks like dogs. Haverherder her skolator? Doug exclaimed, snapping to attention. During my duty of protecting Naruto, I was assaulted by 3 ninjas who came with the intent to kill or capture him. As they had blocked my other routes, I managed to get Naruto away from them and we fled into the forest. Until they began utilizing explosive tags, I was keeping ahead of them by using the trees. Then I needed to locate a defensible position or, if that wasn't possible, a hiding spot for Naruto. When I arrived, I spotted a small cave and instructed Naruto to conceal himself there until I came for him. I succeeded in killing 2 of the intruders during the battle, but the third chose to employ his final technique to bring down the cave where Naruto was concealed. I called my hounds right after eliminating the last one of the group to retrieve him if he is still alive. Dog concluded his report with that grim note. The headmaster let out a sigh upon seeing the ninja hounds approaching the side of the hill. Do you have any idea who these attackers might be from? Sefster Director, called a voice beside them, interrupting the headmaster. A small dog spoke, I'm sorry, but we can't find him. Unable to find him, inquired Dog while glancing at his summons. What do you mean there isn't even a body? Negative, nada. However, we discovered an item that had traces of his blood on it. You must check this out. The dog informed them. The small hound was followed by the head master and dog. A much larger opening had been cleared out by the ninja dogs, revealing a large chamber that the world technique had not affected. A large crystalline object occupied the center of the room. Numerous seals could be seen on the sides. However, at the bottom they could see a tiny bloodstain. What is that? Durhund fraged. Slightly confused while attempting to comprehend the seals he observed on the item, the headmaster surveyed the entire room while humming to himself. Observing additional seals that are intricately arranged on the floor, walls, and ceiling. I'll need to reach out to Jiraiya so he can come and take a look. It is clear that this room served some kind of ritual purpose, the elderly gentleman stated while he bent in nearer to the crystal to examine the seals. Although he recognized many of them, he would definitely need a second opinion. However, some of those that stood out most reminded him of the summons scrolls. Ich glaube, Nerdo genannt nach Leben, über Solange were net Geno wissen, wofür dieser Raum genutzt word, frucht ich, das, were in net Erreichen tinnen. Pause. Nerdo felt fear. First dog had grabbed him and begun to run. Then those evil men were pursuing them. Then he was forced to conceal himself in a frightening dark cave. He had been crawling through the cave for an unknown duration and to an unknown destination trying to escape from the bad men until dog came and rescued him. Oi! With tears streaming down his face, Nerdo raised his hand to his face. A shard rock had sliced the palm open. Tears threatened to spill from his eyes as he continued into the cave, careful of his now injured hand. The darkness made it impossible to see, but Nerdo recalled a present from Dog that was meant for situations like these. He extracted a plastic stick from his shirt and flexed it until he heard a crack. When the stick was shaken, it began to emit an unsettling green light. This was still preferable to complete darkness. He soon entered a large chamber, where he noticed a peculiar object not far from him. It had some height and was kind of round. There was a large hole in the center of it. He drew nearer to it and put his blood-stained hand on it. Nerdo observed in amazement as it started to shine, and hundreds of squiggly lines illuminated the room. The item resembled a ring crafted from crystals similar to the ones in Grandpa's office. A loud noise startled him. When he looked back, he saw dust rising from the cave. He would be crushed. Retreating from the dust and the noise of the cave collapsing, Nerdo longed to be in a different place, one that was secure and where he could be with family. The radiant sigils blazed up, and Nerdo abruptly sensed fatigue. He swayed, then fell backward through the crystal ring. Nerdo swinkered. It became much brighter around him all of a sudden, yet it remained dark. Befen sich nut in einem Wald. But this one appeared to be different. He could hear the animals now, but they didn't sound friendly. Nerdo did what toddlers do best at that moment. He cried. Pause. A zebra was navigating through the woods while scanning the ground. It soon ceased to search for a peculiar mushroom, pick it, and place it in a bag. Bands of gold adorned the zebra, and a stylized sun symbol was placed on its flank. Secret was her name, and she was a medicine zebra. Please note that I will attempt to get the dialogue correct, but forgive me if I don't succeed. This will completely fry my spell check. As they caught a sound that was out of place in Everfree Forest, her ears twitched. Do my ears deceive me, or is that the sound of a child weeping? Secret bildet einen Reim. She headed in the direction of the sound, assuming a little pony had wandered off while exploring the woods. Just imagine how surprised she is when she discovers a creature unlike any she's ever seen before. Its mane was blonde, but it only grew on the top of its head, and it had whisker marks on its cheeks. However, it was the blue eyes that drew her attention the most. Secret and hurt sich offen das kleine Wesen nicht zu sehr zu erschrecken. Little one, you need to stop your crying. Now tell Secret what your ailments are. In her rhymes she asked it. This had an instant effect on the child as she quieted and stared at her in wonder. Earl Chelt unstreckt die Hand nach Eros. Secret bemerkt dabei die Wund and einer seiner Handen. Goodness, that's a terrible cut. We need to get you to my hut. Bever secret sich for dem kind bekekt hat im bereits it was gesagt. Here now on my back. We ought to be hitting the road soon. The child nodded and crawled ahead, clutching Sekrik to avoid falling off. At this, Sekrik nodded and returned to a standing position. Child, grip me firmly. For these woods are very perilous after dark. Beaver Sekrik in einem gleichem eigen Trab in Rittung heimet Aufbrach gab ein Warnung aus. Pause. Nachdem Sekrik die Wund gereinigt an sich noch it was mit dem kind unterhalten hat, legt is zum Ausruhen a. Talk wasn't exactly the right term, the child could hardly speak, but she managed to get the details she needed. He was only 3, and his name was Naruto. Sekrik shook her head at the thought that the child was still a foal, and that she had found him lost in Everfree. The next detail, which was of great importance, was how he got there. He described it, albeit in his own limited fashion, as a magic portal indicating that he was trapped here until one of his kind could trace the magic that had brought him to her. Now the question was what to do with the child. She could take him into town, but given his unusual appearance, she couldn't be certain that anyone there would accept him. Although she could bring him to Celestia, securing a meeting with the princess was challenging even under optimal circumstances. She perceived a rustling sound and noticed that Naruto was tossing in his sleep. Sekrik, he muttered while sleeping. He smiled at this and approached him. She started to sing while nuzzling the little creature. The phrases were in her first language, a gentle lullaby for the slumbering child. She made a decision while she was singing. She would look after the child and keep him. If his family came looking for him, she would deal with that situation when it arose. As the contents of the cauldron stew, a bubbling sound fills the room. The walls of the room were adorned with large masks. Bottles containing unidentified substances dangled from the ceiling on cords. Alongside the occasional book, shelves held jars and jugs. Hanging baskets contained a variety of plants and herbs. A cloaked figure entered as the door swung open. This being advanced toward the cauldron on all fours. The hood was pushed back, exposing a face that was both white and black. A zebra sat there looking down at the bubbling mixture with its blue eyes as it assessed it. Gold bands decorated her neck and leg. Each ear was adorned with a loop of gold. This was Sekrik, an expert in mystical brews and potions. Far shroom und ein spritzer honey dew. For the stew I have to mix well. The mixture will soon be ready and in the stomachs of mother and son. Sekrik intunnert. She took a sip of the stew and assessed its flavor and temperature. With an approving nod, she turned to the next task. Mischievous wind, heed my call. Either get home soon or there will be no lunch. Sekrik laughed at the yelp that came in response to her announcement. Naruto had entered her life 2 months ago. In this period, they had developed a connection. She had turned into his family. She bestowed upon him a new name to commemorate the event, one she believed suited him quite well. Whenever she put him to bed, she would use his original name. This served as a reminder of his origins, ensuring he wouldn't forget them. A blonde whirlwind rushed down the stairs before collapsing onto the ground. Een kind mit bloeien skimmernden ogen stout sie an, oren sich seen gezeit zu einem schimmelmund verziet. Mom, you have to tell me that you didn't mean that. Not getting stew is a terrible joke. Yes, he had begun calling her mother, and she did not object once she learned that he had never known his parents. After the time that had elapsed, she wouldn't have it any other way either. Pardon me if I chuckle, but my little lie did cause you to hessel. Sekrik went to a counter and took 2 wooden balls. She provided one for Mischievous, who used it to serve himself. They both sat at a table that seemed to be fashioned from a tree stump. This has been the case since he arrived. A routine that, although Sekrik was reluctant to break, she was seriously contemplating doing so. Although the Everfree forest was rich in ingredients for her potions and brews, it wasn't a safe environment for such an energetic child. Due to her size, some forest creatures regarded her as prey, making mischievous wind an easy target for them. And then there are the many toxic plants. No, she would need to move to a different location. She was fortunate to have a friend in Canterlot, a unicorn who worked as a university teacher. He was constantly on the lookout for information about potions. It might be possible for her to get help from him in establishing a business in town. It would give Mischievous the opportunity to make some friends. After all, no child should have to grow up alone. The ever-free forest had not seen anyone arrive in search of the child. She had her doubts about whether they knew how to get in touch with him. He told her that Naruto arrived here through some spell or magic. He depicted a room teeming with luminous symbols, the noise of falling stones, and a conflict. As she contemplated this, Secret frowned mentally. It was likely that no one would come for the child. However, he is not a pony to begin with. She reflected with regret. She looked across the table and noticed that Mischievous Wind was absent. Changing her gaze, she noticed him beside the kettle on tiptoe as he helped himself to more stew. Mischievous Wind, be careful. We don't require another mess to develop. She cautioned, recalling an event no more than 7 days prior when he lost his balance and fell, bringing the kettle down with him and scattering its contents on the ground. He gave a sheepish smile before returning to the table with a ball that was mostly full. En stoldig mutter, das hätte ich wissen sollen. I will be more careful in and. He hesitated in his speaking while attempting to find a fitting rhyme. He wrinkled his face while concentrating hard on his limited vocabulary. Oh ta! Secret's laughter echoed in the hut, while Mischievous felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. Pause, I hunt. When I selected a target, nothing could elude my attention. I would pursue my quarry to the world's ends. I crept up on the prey, slowly getting closer and closer while attempting to avoid revealing my presence. Yes, I hold positions. I sprang from the spot where a child with whiskers fell to the ground without much elegance. A dust cloud billowed. His hands were locked together above a particular area on the ground, as though they were holding something in place. With a smile, the child opened his hands to show nothing. The boy, with a frown on his face, scanned the clearing and understood that his target, a shiny beetle, had evaded his effort to catch it. He was growling and preparing to try once more to catch the bug when he heard a noise from the hut. With curiosity, he crossed the small clearing around the house where he lived with his mom. Mischievous looked through one of the windows and saw his mother packing several of her bottles and jars. Mischievous Wind was now officially bewildered. What would make Mom pack her things? He caught Secret's attention as he walked through the front door. Ah, there you are, my little one. Would you like to assist me in finishing this? She made an inquiry. With some hesitation, Mischievous nodded before dashing over to help. Despite being ablaze with questions, he compelled himself to keep quiet. However, this did not prevent his imagination from generating answers independently. Warsayam Gian. Nam Sayin Mit. Warsi Debi and Zuverlassen. What was the reason for her departure from him? Sklekt. Mischievous' head was still swirling with heavy thoughts. As the tension mounted, Secret affectionately nuzzled her adopted son and drew closer to him. Nerdu flustert sie, du musst nicht mit Ternenassen Augen schauen, auch wenn dies ein Berestung ist. We are packing up today in order to move away safely. Because the forest is not a suitable place for raising a foal. Therefore, Canterlot is our target now. Nerdu faced her and looked at her with a questioning expression. Not comprehending entirely what she was attempting to convey to him. Pay attention to me, my child, for the woods are untamed and free. Various threats lie in wait, with some actively hunting you to harm. She went on with her explanation in order for him to understand the reason for their departure. It saddens me to think of your injury. Thus we depart for an improved future. Many fools stay where we're headed, perhaps you'll make a friend there one day. She added with a lighter tone. This appeared effective as Nerdu became more animated and offered her a slight smile. They packed away the rest of the necessary items in silence and loaded them onto a flat cart. Secret requested Naruto to walk alongside her while they exited the forest, tugging on the harness. The journey was long and the path was winding. The towering trees of the forest create shadows in every direction. Naruto glanced at the large, gnarled tree trunk they passed by, which was much taller than the others. Naruto observed that she appeared to have the route memorized. Although the forest is said to be perilous, they seldom come across anything remarkable. Naruto does notice, however, that there were several instances when the edge was in sight, but Sekrik would turn and they would take a different path. We are on the safest route and we will be out very soon. Without this winding path, we would encounter the Manticore's wrath. She spoke with a calm voice. Naruto moved closer to her, but was now afraid of getting too far away. As soon as the trees thinned out and fields came into view ahead of them, Sekrik let out a small laugh. Naruto beamed at the view. Everything appeared far more peaceful and brighter than whatever Free permitted. He dashed ahead to sprint across the field. The child started to pursue anything that moved, accompanied by loud laughter. The sight warmed Sekrik's heart. She understood his sadness at not being able to venture deeper into the forest, but out here he could run as much as he wanted. Come now, child, you ought to hold back. We have to rush in order to catch the train. She shouted to him. Naruto agreed and dashed back to her side, wishing to avoid causing her any trouble. As they traveled, he kept looking around. A big red pony was taking care of a large apple orchard which he saw. As he looked up, his eyes grew wide. Winged ponies were moving the clouds. Sekrik laughed lightly at how he reacted. She hadn't had the opportunity to tell him about all the ponies yet. Those creatures are Pegasi, they have dominion over the weather and the sky. The ponies looking after the fields are of world. They are filled with mirth and have a strong heart. And we mustn't overlook the unicorns who channel magic through their horns. Here was being looked at by Naruto with wide eyes. He didn't believe they would have so many types or that magic existed. The stories Sekrik spun about their world captivated him. As she recounted the many feats she had witnessed ponies perform, it seemed they arrived at the train station all too quickly. They placed the cart in one of the luggage cars and departed to search for a seat on the train. Just to clarify, why not stay in the nearby town? Naruto had delivered this part slowly, attempting to get the phrasing of the question correct while maintaining a rhyme. Sekrik took pride in his endeavors. In terms of talking, he was performing better than most foals of his age. Mit einem Susser want Sekrik seinen Blick ab unsack dan ich erfurcht, Ponneville, Rud unseren Aufenthalt nicht bigger en wann immer ich in die Stadt gehe sein sie für den Tag verschwunden. Since they have never encountered someone like me, the only thing I seem to come across is fear. Of course, if she applied a bit more pressure she could advance somewhat, but that would genuinely be an intrusion. Now her friend in Canterlot had managed to come through a significant amount. Rather than a store, her review was for a role at the Princess Celestia's School for Gifted Unicorns. It appears that a while has gone by since they managed to locate somebody qualified to instruct on potions and exotic plants. Let's hope this turns out to be the best option. Pause. Even with mischievous winds, rapid-fire questions about everything they saw on the way to Canterlot, the train ride was enjoyable. Sekrik laughed quietly as the city left, Naruto lost for words. She had to concede it was a sight worth seeing. However, they could not delay as the train was on a timetable and she needed to collect her bags. She clamped mischievous shirt between her teeth and dragged him with her toward the luggage car. Nachdem sie den Wagen gehalt und sich angeschnallt hat, want sie sich an Aaron Sohn. Listen closely, young one, as I know you want to have fun. You will ride on my back even if you feel the need to conceal yourself. For I would become rather angry if you were to get lost. Sekrik gave a warning. Canterlot is very large and one can vanish quickly. I don't want my heart to race, so please don't make me anxious. She has completed it. Naruto climbed onto her back, nodding his head. Gripping her neck with his hands to assist in maintaining his balance. he softly spoke while rubbing his face against the fur on her neck. Yes, Mom, I get it. I'll resist my curious ways. Mom, I love you dearly. It drives me crazy that you're not here. He muttered. That made Sekrik's heart swell. She entered the town at a steady trot, aiming to minimize her time spent looking around. Before evening set in, she had to get to the school. Professor Gemini, her friend, was anticipating her arrival at around 3 o'clock. Disappointing him was not part of her plans. The train station was located at a short distance from the palace proper, so it took little time to reach their destination. As the entrance came into view, she reduced her speed until she halted. 2 guard ponies were inspecting every pony who passed through. She turned to Mischievous, nodding to herself that her information was correct. Wind, my dear little one, I need to inquire if you can carry out a straightforward task. There is a significant message in the book titled Plants Through the Age. Erhielt von Sekrik die Mitteilung. Mischievous made his way onto the cart and started rifling through the items inside. He perked up after a minute. Discovered it? He chirped, showing his find to Sekrik. The zebra nodded, saying, excellent. Now keep it handy, as that is what the guards will require. She informed him. Mischievous indicated his understanding with a nod and got back onto his mother's back. Sekrik headed to the checkpoint with little worry now. The guards examined the letter and allowed her to pass. They did not even glance at Mischievous, but then again, there was a magic school behind them. The strange creature was nothing compared to the far stranger things they had witnessed with fillies and colts experimenting. Sekrik went on her way to school. She soon spotted a blue unicorn with a black mane in a tailored suit coming straight at her. Ah, Sekrik, my dear. It's been ages since our last meeting, said Professor Gemini. Sekrik let out a chuckle. Yes, this is very true. I do take pleasure in your letters. Professor Gemini smiled at this, but then noticed her passenger. Who is this, I asked now? I am aware that you spoke of an intriguing discovery, but I have yet to encounter a being resembling this one. My treasure has become Mischievous Wind. I could not explain it to him in a letter. Sekrik began, while Mischievous had curled up behind her to evade the notice of the new pony. Als ich Flansen im ever free Samelt, word ich von einem neuen Schrei aufmerksam. I followed the sound to its origin, discovering this foal crying heavily. Leaving the little one was not an option for me, and before long he became my son. Ein Erkel Rung von Sekrik. At that announcement, Gemini's eyes widened slightly. Mischievous Wind, do not conceal yourself, for greetings you must deliver. As she turned to face the child, she said. The little wind, taking his cue, emerged slowly from his hiding place. Before speaking, he nervously looked up at the unicorn. Hello, Mura. Gemini, I apologize for not saying hey. He managed to let out a squeak before once more concealing himself behind Sekrik. Professor Gemini blinked and then let out a chuckle. I see he resembles you quite well. It was beyond my imagination to encounter another pony who spoke in rhymes like that. But I must inquire, Mischievous Wind. Does he appear to be very shy? Sekrik nodded, saying it suits him perfectly, and there's even a tale to tell. Mom, please no. Spinning that yarn is just so beneath the belt. With the horror of an embarrassing tale piercing his shell, Mischievous protested, suddenly shedding his shyness. His wish was to help our meal, and we had an interesting dish. As she recounted the story, Sekrik chuckled, and Gemini was not much different. Mischievous strolled next to them toward the building, his gaze directed at the floor. As his feats were recounted, his face took on a reddish hue. He was unaware that a part of being a parent is to embarrass one's children. Pause. The interview was conducted smoothly. Sekrik was quickly established in her own classroom. She took pleasure in instructing the children about her selected art form. Time appeared to lose its clarity, and before they realized it, a month had gone by. But despite the fact that they had adapted well, Sekrik could sense that something was amiss. Nurdu had not made any friends during the time they had been here. She let out a sigh upon seeing the sadness in his eyes. Even if he tries to conceal it, she can see through the facade he presents. Mischievous Wind was concealed from the other ponies in a park wrapped in a gray cloak. He carried an air of sadness, though no one noticed it. In order to notice one, a willingness to approach was necessary. However, Naruto was both a stranger and a peculiar being. As no one knew what he was, they kept their distance from him. They would get up and leave whenever he attempted to approach them. Now, he was just sitting on the sand, hollow. With an upward gaze, Mischievous' eyes grew round. A unicorn filly stood opposite him. She had a purple coat, and her mane was a dark violet blue. A magenta stripe ran through both her mane and tail. Ogen hatten die gleich farb wie Irem hen. I was curious if you'd like to play. She made an inquiry. She was glancing off to the side and digging her hoof into the sand in a nervous manner. You wanna play with me? Mischievous inquired, uncertain if this was really going on. Yes, if you want to, that as he presented the unicorn. Mischievous let out a joyful holler before noticing the unicorn's flinch at the loudness. Oh, I mean yes please. It would bring me joy. The young horse gave him a gentle smile and said, I'm Twilight Sparkle. What's your name? Wind Voller Skabernack. Will you be my friend? Mischievous asked hesitantly. Of course. Twilight spoke, and the two of them played together for the remainder of the afternoon, hardly noticing that Twilight's sitter was watching them the entire time. Pause. Princess my amor Cadenza, the heir to the Crystal Empire and renowned as the world's finest foal sitter, observed with pride as her charge made friends with the unusual child in the park. Although she was still young, she had the height of a fully grown pony. Her form was much more slender, her light pink coat was groomed, and her tri-colored mane was tied back in a tail. Her magenta white and purple locks framed her horn as it poked up from them. She was an alicorn, embodying the traits of every type of pony. Her unique gift of love heightened her awareness of every pony's feelings. Though one didn't actually need that ability to notice the sadness of this foal. A few times she had witnessed him attempting to befriend others, only to be rejected. It made her sad, and she wanted to change that. Fortunately, it required only a few hints for Twilight to approach him and strike up a conversation. She felt happy about being able to remove that sadness. After all, no pony wanted to be isolated. As they engaged in hide and seek across the park, she smiled gently. She was so engrossed in the achievement that she completely overlooked the new arrival until they announced themselves. Well, this is quite a sight. I was afraid I would have to comfort him again that night. The sound of the voice caused Princess Cadence to almost jump out of her skin. She spun around to locate the origin and confronted a zebra. While she was watching the children, her gaze was more directed at the unusual foal than at Twilight. Wer bist du sein sei? The zebra smiled at her and said, I'm Secret, and I owe you a thank you, Miss Amor. Mein Sohn ist Skelmisch under hat keinen Spe. I was afraid that ultimately he might not make any friends. Secret turned around to observe her son playing with the little filly. His laughter alleviating the concern she had carried since bringing him to Canterlot. Princess Cadence sensed the affection the zebra had aimed at the peculiar foal. It eliminated any doubt regarding her assertion that she was his mother. She rotated her head to keep an eye on Twilight and the now named Mischievous as they played. Nobody merits solitude. It is also beneficial that Twilight needs to break out of her shell. They remained there, sharing a comfortable silence. The little ones played until Celestia's sun started to descend in the sky. Also, the children were starting to display the impacts of the day. Both had reduced their pace and agreed that resting on the grass was preferable to running around. In my opinion, it is time for me to take Twilight back home. If possible, I hope Mischievous will be here again. The last remark was more like a request that was poorly concealed. Dar Berskamunzalt Secret. Yes, I doubt I could keep him away, maybe we'll talk another day. The zebra then strolled over to the spot where the children were playing, capturing their attention. Time to go home, Mischievous. I'm certain your friend has to head to her own. Although both children didn't argue, they groaned at the thought of going home. Nachdem mischievous und Twilight sich verabschiedet hatten, erhört Secret Ehren son Zerke Nachhaus. Hearing him recount the games he played with his new friend, Twilight is the greatest. We engaged in hide and seek, played on the swings, and tried out a few word games. With excitement, Mischievous said. He was unable to concentrate on searching for rhymes that would assist him in expressing his feelings about having a friend. Secret just chuckled, not caring to mention this fact. Pause. A shadow darted down the corridor. Unnoticed, the enigmatic figure neared the central room. A violet blur concealed itself behind a column. It was none other than Twilight Sparkle, the greatest archaeologist in Equestria. As she scanned the room, she looked for indications of concealed threats. Twilight told the story while glancing around nervously. She found herself at the heart of the palace's hedge maze. Her brother's shining armor and cadence were watching her along with one of her friends. It was evident that the room had been extensively readied for the occurrence of thieves. Twilight kept on telling the story. In front of her was a collection of different objects. Ropes marked off zones designated as pitfalls, while stone circles denoted stable footing. In order for Twilight to see the other traps, she had to get past this first challenge. Also sprang sie ber kan dijk Twilight and hafuf von kreis zo kreis, bis sie die ander seat errate had. Und errecht die ander seat unversiert. Oh. There was a red X beneath her hooves that represented a trap. All of a sudden, a storm of missiles was coming directly at her. Twilight ran away from the spot with a squeal, being careful not to cross the rope again or step on any more says. With a resounding squelch, the projectiles landed behind her, narrowly avoiding her flank. Schalfhaft. You concealed the cest. Twilight whined as she realized the game would be much more difficult than she had initially thought. What did you think I would do? Just go and make it easy for you. A voice reverberated off the clearing's walls. Mischievous did not plan to abandon his hiding place. Their observers stood to the side, attempting unsuccessfully to stifle the laughter that arose from the game. Twilight stood up and cleared her throat after muttering a few childish insults under her breath. Although this minor, she stressed, glaring at the projectile's trajectory setback. Twilight was not redirected. She scanned the area for any additional traps. Her goal was just across a narrow bridge. The Holly idol was seated, the mentioned idol being one of Twilight's plush toys. The area designated as the bridge was indicated between the ropes. It was also concealed by leaves, indicating that Naruto was hiding a trap here. Upon closer inspection, she saw the edge of an axe, then another and mischievous. Once more she complained. Now, Miss Archaeologist, you did insist on a challenge. Quit your grumbling about the difficulties and get to work on the puzzle. He placed the order while glancing out from his hiding spot. A tree that provided him with a complete view of the whole route. Twilight scowled, but redirected her focus to the task ahead of her. Examining the leaves directly before her for any sign of a passage through. A stone is there. Upon closer inspection, she noticed a circle of stones among the leaves. With excitement, she scanned the entire bridge and was able to locate others. With her flank raised high and leaning forward, Twilight effortlessly leaped from circle to circle. Ha! The amazing Twilight can handle any challenge, no matter how great. She crowed over solving Mischievous Wind's puzzle. In this manner, the courageous young horse takes possession of her prize. As one of the boxes intended to serve as steps to the idol collapsed, revealing a large red zero, her voice cracked in surprise. The master trap trigger's mark. As she glanced over, she spotted Mischievous, who was grinning widely at her, and had his arms full of the wet rags being used as trap ammo. As she sprinted the final distance to the idol, Twilight let out a scream, avoiding the many rags that are tossed at her. Before circling back to the bridge, she grabbed the stuffed toy with her mouth. Even though the toy was in her, she kept on screaming. She was aware that adhering to the rules was necessary for her return, just as it had been for her arrival, otherwise, she would face defeat. She jumped across the safe spots as quickly as possible while rags fell down around her. She somehow managed to evade being struck as she landed on the other side, and now she was making her way toward the only exit path. The circles of stone that indicated the way in were no longer Mischievous's target, as he had adjusted his aim away from them. Twilight was unable to halt her progress, given that she was so near to victory this time. She calculated the timing of her jump to ensure she would land between his throws. She leapt over the final circles, made it to the opposite side of the pit, and ran to conceal herself behind Cadence and Shining Armor. The two ponies were now laughing freely at the performance they had witnessed. With her prize, Twilight lay sprawled on the ground panting. It was a narrow escape, but she managed to grab the idol without getting hit. She was the victor. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Twilight joyfully skipped around the two older ponies. Good job, Twilly. While ruffling his little sister's hair, Shining told her. Shining was a unicorn of white color with a mane of deep blue. Just like Twilight, he had a brighter colored strip in both his mane and tail that contrasted with the rest. Congratulations on your success, Twilight Sparkle. Mischievous Wind remarked while standing next to Princess Cadence. But now it's time to tidy up the mess. He completed his statement by indicating the state of disarray they had left the garden in. Twilight appeared somewhat embarrassed by this, but soon accompanied her friend as they set out to restore the garden to its natural state. As the foals worked, Shining Armor inched closer to Princess Cadence. You were correct, he has had a positive impact on her. He made a comment. Initially, he was uncertain about what to believe when he heard that his sister had made a new friend. Zuerst kam die Berechtung bald darauf das Gulke. Then, upon discovering that the friend was a boy, the overly protective instincts kicked in. The cult elicited an eye roll from Cadence. Gab is Jimmels einen Grund and meiner Urteilskraft zu zweifeln. She made an inquiry. Obviously, they are a good match. But no, you were being all protective until I brought you here. She gently teased. In Ordnung. I acknowledge it, my behavior was somewhat foolish. Shining Armor acknowledged. But come on, can you really hold that against me? Sie ist sklelich mein klein Schwester. He told her while playing the big brother card. Yes, I'm aware. It's a fact that can be so easily overlooked at times. She stated this with an innocent demeanor. Hey, what's that supposed to signify? He asked a question. They would have carried on were it not for the fact that a certain someone announced their arrival at that moment. It pains me to break in on this light-hearted banter. Started Secret, who had suddenly appeared beside both ponies. This action made Shining and Cadence jump in fright. However, evening is coming quickly. With a smile, she indicated the young ponies' faces as they lit up with embarrassment. Secret. Mum. Two voices echoed. Before long, the children were standing in front of the zebra and chattering with excitement simultaneously. Secret shook her head at the spectacle. Take a seat and stay calm. She commanded, causing both the little ones to follow her orders. Twilight, what made you call me Mom? She made fun. This caused both kids to shout denials and attempt to set the record straight. Secret simply laughed at how easy they were to tease. In Ordnung erklären. It is necessary for you to relax and talk individually. Cadence, always the diplomat, stepped in. Before giving the ponies big dew eyes and asking in flawless unison, sleep over please. Twilight and Mischievous exchanged a glance. Their guardians, of course, found it difficult to withstand the impact of those eyes. Then what caused this? He questioned Shining while attempting to avoid gazing into those wicked yet overly adorable eyes. The summer sun celebration. Once more, the foals spoke in unison. Prior to their collapse into a jumble of talk, Secret smiled at Shining Armor. If you don't mind keeping an eye on the little one, I have no objections to him having fun. She informed him. All the strength of their gaze was directed at Shining Armor by Twilight and Mischievous. His fate was sealed. Okay, I will organize it with Mom and Dad. Shining Armor admitted defeat. While the little ones celebrated by embracing shining armor, Cadence concealed her chuckle with a hoof. Pause. Surprisingly, it required less effort to convince Twilight's parents to accept Mischievous than it did for shining armor. That could be due to the shock of Twilight having a friend other than Cadence or her brother though. However, their warming up to him didn't imply that Mischievous had done the same for them. "Well, it's great to have you, Mischievous," Moonbeam, Twilight's mother, commented. In the sitting room, Twilight Sparkle and Shining Armor stood beside the small creature named Mischievous. "Oh, thanks." Mischievous spoke softly as he glanced at his toes. He radiated nervous tension as a candle does light. At this point, no reason exists to be frightened. Anyone who is friends with Twilight is welcome here. She attempted to reassure him. As Mischievous moved closer to Twilight, she let out a small squeak. Twilight was casting her friend a peculiar glance. He had never behaved this way before, although there was that instance when Cadence joined them, and he was quite quiet around her until he got used to her. But why was he acting so shy all of a sudden? At that moment, Mischievous thoughts were in turmoil. Will they accept me? Will it bother them that I'm here? If I make a bad impression, will they tell Twilight to stop being my friend? What should I do? I want to avoid upsetting them. The internal struggle against his fear of rejection, which always arises when he attempts to converse with someone new. Moonbeam let out a sigh before heading to the kitchen to make dinner. Shining Armor entered to assist her with it. "Don't fret, Mom, he'll come around to you. Ich verste einfach nicht, schijnt berhaupt nicht so zu sehen, wie du mir halt hast." She interrogated her son in an attempt to understand how the being present was meant to be the same as the one Twilight mentioned. Hat einfach Angst? Is word von Shining Armor gesagt? Juxlative? Did I do something that frightened him? She couldn't recall any actions she had taken up to that point that would frighten anyone. "You haven't done anything wrong." While averting his gaze, Shining Armor acknowledged it. "When I first met him, he was more outgoing and friendly. After that, I noted that I was Twilly's older brother and he shut down. While I recounted some stories Twilly had told me, he remained silent for a long while. Trots allem sprach net mit mir und hat Angst vor mir." Eventually, he spoke. "Do you know what he said?" Shining inquired of his mother. While preparing a salad, the mature mare shook her head. She encouraged her son to go on. "He inquired of me, 'Are you removing Twilight?' He was afraid I would no longer allow him to play with Twilight." Shining informed his mother. Apparently for the time that he has been in Canterlot, other than his own mother and a few of the school teachers, everyone has been avoiding him because they don't know what he is. It will just take a little time. Once he realizes you have no grudges against him, he will come around. This made Moonbeam frown. Although she felt sorry for the boy, she realized that her reaction would likely not differ much had she encountered Mischievous instead. She let out a sigh and scolded herself, reminding herself not to judge a book by its cover. It was a lesson she learned ages ago but still sometimes forgets. She let out a sigh. "I understand, all we can do is let him warm up to us." Using her magic, she elevated the spread and set it down on the table. Even with the addition to the table, dinner was usual for the family of 4. As their parents listened, Twilight and Shining talked about their day. The mischievous wind was gradually starting to unwind in its new surroundings when Mischievous cheated, all the Cs were covered in leaves. Twilight complained. He countered, unwilling to let such a slight against his integrity slide. "I didn't cheat, they're traps designed to be concealed," he retorted without bothering to rhyme his words, prioritizing a quick defense instead. "Ah, he can talk then." Night Sky noted, father of the 2 unicorns. He felt pleased that the child, whatever it was finally becoming more social. "The issue isn't speaking, it's getting him to be quiet." Shining Armor made a humorous remark. Mischievous shot a glare at Shining Armor, but it didn't manage to frighten anyone. "I have a problem being silent, perhaps I can give you a surprise." Den ich erinnere mich an einen Hengst und ein Stute, die sich ganz dumm verliert anblickten. With a grin Mischievous finished up. There is the interesting speech they mentioned. Night Sky considered the statement before raising an eyebrow. Oh ich deche, die Einzigen and Mizenden ponies, ren our dre on cadence. He said, placing emphasis on her name. Given his coughing, it appeared that Shining Armor had mismanaged the swallowing of his food. Cadence and it. Don't act foolish. Why would there be anything happening between Cadence and me? Shining inquired with a hint of anxiety. Then he tried to change the subject, saying, So Dad, how was your day? I believe I also have an interest in this. Moonbeam stated, pinning her son with a smile and an expression. Shining Armor avoided eye contact with his mother as he pondered how to avoid discussing his crush. After Mischievous had finished whispering something into Twilight's ear, both of them broke out in matching grins and began to chant. Shining and Cadence are concealed within a labyrinth. Both are ensnared in each other's gaze. At that moment, the foals were silenced by magic as sizable quantities of seled were crammed into their mouths. As the light disappeared from Shining Armor's horn, he started to cough into his hoof, pretending not to notice them. Throughout the house, laughter reverberated. Pause. Stilaf jetst, arbeiden. Wirm sen vor sonnenafgang aufstehen zur Feier zugen. As the white mare tucked them in, Moonbeam told Twilight and Mischievous. Before closing the door behind her, she turned back as she exited the room and wished them both a good night. Twilight and Mischievous shared her bed, designed for a full-grown pony, so they had ample space. The peaceful silence was free from oppression. Stelmist. Twilight began to disrupt the quiet. Ja. Is fruit mich, das du heut nat blaben contest. Twilight informed him. Then the silence extended once more. Demurung. Diesmal brach Mischievous als erster die still. Ja. Will brachab unverscht, seen in Chesten wert sorgfältig aujo hlan. Will you always be my friend? Stelt ihr ein Frage. In the low light of the room, Twilight turned her head to gaze at him, intrigued by the reason for his question. Naturlich Mischievous word ich das. She informed him. Once more the silence occupied the room. Nerdo. Hug. Mein tats klitscher name. Before making the decision to move on, Nerdo halted. My mum named me Mischievous when to help me fit in. My actual name is Nerdo. Rather than silence, a slight rustling was audible, and Nerdo tensed for a moment as he felt Twilight wrap around him. I will always be your friend, Nerdo. This time, she made a promise. Silence reigned, then the room was filled with the soft, steady breathing of sleeping foals. Pause. Grow. It was a fitting way to depict the streets of Canterlot that morning. There's sufficient illumination for visibility, yet all around you is a dearth of color. Before the raised platform, ponies were milling about in anticipation of the event. Everyone was present for the same reason, to witness Princess Celestia elevate the sun. Nerdu common, we got a rush. Called out to Twilight as the small purple filly galloped down the street. Hold on, Twilight. I can't keep up with your speed. While he was running at top speed behind her, he said to her. They quickly reached the throng of ponies and commenced their attempts to advance to the front. It took them a minute to navigate to the front of the crowd, where they waited for the event to occur. They were both entranced by the sight of Princess Celestia emerging onto the stage. Her tail and mane flowed as if they were being stirred by an unseen breeze. Colors changed and shifted, evoking thoughts of the morning mist. Her coat shone with an immaculate white hue, and she moved with the ease of one accustomed to it. She bowed her head as she turned to face the crowd of ponies. The end of her horn lit up with a golden glow. She took to the air with a flap of her wings, bringing the sun and dawn along with her. Whoa! As Twilight and Nerdu observed the unfolding scene, they exchanged a whisper. Once the festivities were over, the ponies returned to their normal lives, but Twilight and Nerdo stayed in their current location. As they basked in the sunshine, their imaginations ignited with thoughts of the event they had seen. Nerdo. Twilight spoke softly to her friend. Ja Twilight. Ich will magi lernen. she exclaimed with excitement. After that display, Naruto could only agree with a nod. Nothing would prevent him from learning alongside Twilight. Let's learn everything we can as a team. Twilight smiled at her friend and returned the nod. They stood up and made their way to Twilight's house. As they progressed, Twilight came to a realization. Naruto, you haven't used any rhymes all day. Naruto's eyes were shut, and he breathed steadily. He was engaged in meditation. He and Twilight fell in love with the idea of magic 2 months ago and began their studies. They examined various books in the process of unlocking their magic. However, a problem arose. These books described how unicorns utilized their magic, which Naruto definitely was not. However, this did not prevent him from making the attempt. He was obstinate, a characteristic he had in common with Twilight. Nevertheless, many of the books shared a key detail. Concentration. Twilight and Naruto understood that they needed to train this skill, as all the books indicated its necessity, but they were uncertain about how to do so. His mother was asked by Naruto, and Zekrik instructed them to participate in meditation with her. As Zekrik chanted to them, Twilight and Naruto found themselves in the main room of his home. The decoration struck Twilight as strange, with masks and trinkets adorning the walls, each carrying some significance that she couldn't grasp just yet. But at the moment, that wasn't what mattered. Concentrate on your breath, in and out, in and out. Concentrate solely on the air in your snout. Sie werden von Zekrik informiert. Of course, they both refrained from laughing. It took them almost a week to maintain their focus on everything she said. Zekrik nodded to herself as they sat and concentrated on the exercise, pleased that they were making progress. She recited a simple rhythm for them to keep pace with. Her eyes observed the faintest wisps of power manifest around them, only to vanish as quickly as they appeared. She shook her head while admonishing them. Haste will lead to great foolishness. This will happen naturally. At this moment, take a deep breath in and let it out again. For another 30 minutes, this practice persisted, an incredible feat to get any foal to remain motionless for that duration. This day is enough. Now you two should go outside and play. Sie werden von Zekrik informiert. It surprised her that neither of the children moved after she spoke. She examined them more closely, pondering whether they had attained a genuine meditative trance. Gentle snores issued from the children. Zekrik let out a chuckle and repositioned them to make them more comfortable. After all, a little nap never hurt anyone. A rap on the door made her aware of a visitor. She opened the door for her visitor as she walked across the room. Hi Zekrik, sein Sie bereit zum Loslegen? Princess Cadence inquired. After each session, the alicorn came to collect the foals. They have already departed, or so it appears, to the realm of sweet dreams. Zekrik dudet auf die Stelle, and der die fallen sich nun auf dem Boden zusammengestellt hatten. They glanced back just in time to see the shift come closer together. Ow, they look adorable together. Prinzessin Cadence sagt und den Gab is ihnen Litblitz. Zekrik managed to turn around just in time to catch a glimpse of a camera that the princess was holding. Und jetzt habe ich ein niedliches Foto von ihnen zusammen. She spoke to the zebra, who shared a laugh with her. Zekrik guided her into the kitchen and made some herbal tea. Apologies for this stroke of fate, I hope it doesn't cause you to be late. Zekrik offered Cadence a cup of her brew along with herself. No, definitely not. I find it nice that they are so close. O erdem hat ich heut kein wichtigen Planen. While she ran a hoof through her mane, Cadence told her host. A few obstinate strands that want to stay put in the multicolored mane. It is very fortunate, as I believe we have a few things to talk about. They are advancing significantly, but I hope this does not cause distress. As Cadence glanced back at the spot where Twilight and Naruto were lying, Zekrik told her. For a moment, Cadence regarded her with suspicion. Regrettably, I cannot follow. Bever Zekrik Ergelrut Suvster. Do you see? There's a small fear that I must be calm to hear. Today, they achieved their magic brief at the exact moment I mentioned. They have grown so close in such a short time, it is both a blessing and a curse. For a short while Princess Cadance was puzzled by the cryptic message, but then her eyes widened. Their synchronization? She inquired with disbelief. Cadance started to contemplate the significance of this revelation after Zekrik gave her a resolute nod. Syncing, an uncommon occurrence among magic users, typically involving twins. It was a connection that, once created, could not be severed without perilous repercussions for those it linked. But in what way? I knew Twilight was special, but I also knew that Naruto was. This is huge. Cadance fumbled her words as she tried to determine the best way to characterize the situation. While this is true, only a select few should possess this knowledge. I believe this was meant to be, so it's best to leave it alone. Zekrik spoke to her in a gentle tone. "In fetch so lassen?" With disbelief, Cadance inquired, "Zekrik, after this connection is established, the only thing that can sever it is death. That only scratches the surface of the issues introduced by its sympathetic aspect. An empathic bond will connect them to one another. Ponies have gone crazy from such a bond." The striped mare was told by Cadance. "Unglaubst du das is net subtiest? Do you think they will break apart?" Cadance was questioned sternly by Zekrik, who then shook her head. No, they would oppose it, even if it meant having a secret meeting. The bond is starting to develop already. The only thing we can do is to uphold the norm. We have to observe and bide our time in order to avert any misfortune. She elucidated gently. With a sigh, Cadance let her eyes rest on the foals. Zekrik had a point. Twilight would go into a rage if they tried to take her from Naruto at this moment, and she believed that even the royal guard couldn't stop Naruto from being with those he cared about. At what point did things become so complex? She asked, though she didn't expect a reply. Pause. A week later, Cadance was still preoccupied with these thoughts. She had received approval to allow the children to play in one of the royal courtyards. There was nothing quite like having actual guards to ensure loved ones were safe. However, she feared that she might be making the children nervous. She observed them as they now sat back to back, Naruto with his legs folded underneath him and Twilight on her haunches. They were once again meditating, a more frequent occurrence that she thought was less related to magic. When the sensing begins, an empathic bond is established, leading to a closeness that no one fully comprehends. To express one's feelings, to reveal your entire self-trust, is the essential element that connects everything. Unwavering trust in your partner, along with the conviction that they would never betray you. In what way? How is it possible for two foals who met just a few months back to form such a bond? Cadance. A serious voice cut in on her reverie. What? Cadance, taken aback, started to search for the origin of the voice, but discovered only her aunt. Tense Celestia. At what point in time did you arrive here? In astonishment, Cadance queries. The stylish deity chuckled, a sound that brought to mind the moment she had inquired of her aunt why the sky was blue. Although I have been here, child, you have been mostly distracted. What is it that is bothering you so? Celestia inquired of her with maternal tenderness. Cadance gazed at the ground, pondering how to explain it to her, all the while experiencing the unmistakable indications of magic. She looked up at all her charges and responded with a tone that was slightly pained but proud. Search for yourself. Princess Celestia lifted a dainty eyebrow at the remark before turning to face the same way as her niece. She widened her eyes at the sight in front of her. She had not encountered a human child or a unicorn foal in centuries. As if that revelation weren't astonishing enough, she witnessed and experienced the magic. It was a considerable amount for such young individuals, but what it was accomplishing. Crimson-orange magic intertwined with violet rose. They danced and mingled, encircling both of the youngsters. O main, began Celestia Brach-Jaduchai. Throughout her long life, she had witnessed this numerous times, the rare couples who accomplished it. Can you see why I worry though? So far I haven't even found the courage to tell Twilight's parents about this. Cadance expressed sorrow. Celestia laughed as much as her position permitted. Cadence, my dear child, you concentrate on the negative aspects of this far too much. She spoke to her niece, who was stunned. Throughout my life, I have encountered many sync pairs. While there may be danger involved, the beauty of that bond makes it feel almost criminal to prevent its occurrence. Do not worry about them, Cadence, they will astonish you with their strength. Celestia directed her eyes back to the foals before her. They would be worth observing. Don't you think it's time to introduce me to your charges, Cadence? After blinking twice, Cadence returned to her normal state. Correct. Cadence spoke with embarrassment. Meeting you will fill them with excitement, you're the very reason they're studying magic. It took Celestia only a moment's thought to deduce that they were at the summer sun celebration. She observed her niece as she guided them out of meditation. As they attempted to rise, the situation became complex. The human advanced on all fours while the unicorn attempted to balance on her hind legs. Before long, they fell into one another and formed a heap of entangled arms and legs. As she walked forward, Celestia let out a chuckle at the sight. It's normal to feel a bit confused, but I believe you two will move past that soon. The foals shot a glare at the one who would laugh at them, only to widen their eyes at the sight of Celestia. Both seemed to have something to say, but lacked the words. Nice. Oh, forget that they already had a word out. To Prinzessin Celestia, how why? As she collided with reality once more, Twilight started to stutter. Naruto, however, was much calmer about it, and had his mischievous mask back on. Oh, my Princess Celeste, it appears you bring about considerable turmoil, he said with a cunning smile, though the smile wasn't directed at Celestia. The princess involved arched an elegant eyebrow at the remark and observed her niece bringing her hoof to her face in annoyance. Twilight twitched at the disrespect her friend had just displayed. Naruto, now is not the moment, please cease your foolish rhymes, Twilight shouted at him. Twilight was met with Naruto's most convincing innocent expression. Should the time not be now, then when and in what way? Stelt ihr ein Frage. Demonstrate some respect for the princess. Why can't you just be more straightforward? Twilight's voice faded as she became aware of her actions. Now you have me doing it as well. She let out a cry before concealing her face with her hooves. This has definitely been amusing. Celestia laughed lightly at the children's antics. Having heard some ambassadors from Zebratia speak similarly, she was curious about where the children had picked it up. Cadence made a slight coughing sound to catch the foal's attention. After she was certain she had it, she turned to her aunt and started the introductions. Twilight Sparkle Mischievous Wind, I would like you to meet my aunt Princess Celestia of Equestria. She informed them, and it was a relief for her that both young ones made an effort to execute a proper bow. She continued with the introductions as she moved to a position behind the children. Your Highness Celestia, these are the individuals I am responsible for. Twilight Sparkle, she remarked, placing a hoof on the purple filly's shoulder, and Mischievous Wind. She has completed it. It is a pleasure to meet you both. I hope you are being treated well by Cadence. Celestia informed them, opting to enjoy herself a bit. It wasn't so long ago that she herself needed a full sitter after all. Princess Cadence turned pale. She was aware of what was about to happen. Although her aunt was generally kind, the act she was about to commit was utterly wicked. Aunt Celestia don't. As Celestia conjured a large book, she shouted. The book was brought down by the sun goddess, who opened it to the first page. It depicted a small pink-furred alicorn foal sporting the same tri-color mane as Princess Cadence. At the age of just 1 year, we see her here. Celestia commenced. Both Naruto and Twilight started to coo at Cadence's adorable pictures. Cadence turned a darker pink due to her embarrassment. Why does Auntie Celestia always carry that book? Cadence expressed sorrow upon hearing the foals burst into laughter. Auntie, please refrain from showing them that picture. As Celestia took out a photo of herself covered in something, she demanded. Pause. Shortly thereafter, Cadence updated Twilight's parents on the situation. Of course, they were worried about their daughter. She conveyed Celestia's perspective on the issue to them, which alleviated some of their concerns. Their ultimate choice was to monitor the children more carefully. The first indications of the bond strengthening appeared a week later. The personalities of Twilight and Naruto started to merge. More frequently, Naruto would be observed gathering books, studying for extended periods, and demonstrating improved retention of his reading. He started to be more organized. Where he would have left things in disarray, now everything found a place that wasn't the floor. Twilight, in contrast, exhibited less nervousness. She had grown calmer and more self-assured. However, the most significant sign was the practical jokes. Twilight had begun to play a few harmless tricks around the house. One outcome was that shining armor, much to his annoyance, was drenched in water. Then, empathy emerged. Since they received multiple alerts about it, it was difficult to determine when it began. No, it was a major incident. While shining armor was keeping an eye on her, Twilight was studying in her room. It was one of the few occasions when she and Naruto were not inseparable. Out of the blue, Twilight gasped and dashed out of the room. Shining armor followed, as there was no way he could ignore his sister fleeing in panic. He quickly caught up to the little filly and asked what was happening. Twilight started to ramble on about Naruto being injured and in a difficult situation. Shining had chosen to let Twilight take the lead since she appeared to know her destination, but he was now worried. He observed his sister rush into an alley, and when he pursued her, he was briefly taken aback. Two colts were attacking Naruto, calling him names like freak and monster. Shining armor was too preoccupied with the crimson haze of rage clouding his sight to notice Twilight moving to Naruto's side. Both foals were quickly enveloped in a protective shield. The colts glanced back to see who had disrupted their amusement, and were met with the furious visage of a unicorn. Shortly thereafter, cries of agony rang out. A short while later, Shining Armor and Twilight Sparkle exited the alley with Naruto, who was being levitated by Shining Armor. As they rushed him to his mother, Twilight kept throwing anxious looks at her friend. Upon seeing the condition of her son, Secret spoke bluntly and instructed them to put him on his bed. It took her just a couple of minutes to examine him and determine that he was merely bruised. She put a salve on the bruises and left him to sleep. Twilight refused to leave his side for the night. As Shining recounted to Secret how they discovered the attack, she concluded that the final stage of the bond had set in. Awareness of your partner's presence and emotions. After the incident, they had not changed much, leading the adults to believe that empathy had existed in the children all along and that they had been concealing it. Both of them continued their education and advanced remarkably. Twilight succeeded in levitating a few of her bigger books. Though Naruto found it hard to make his magic obey him, he managed to maintain contact with it. Then, on an ordinary day, Twilight's parents surprised her. They presented her with an application to enroll in Celestia's school for gifted unicorns. Once she passed a test, she would gain access to some of Canterlot's finest magic instructors. The room was suffocating. Twilight was casting quick looks about her with a hint of anxiety. Before she had been so excited, but now that she was here, she wanted nothing more than to blend into the wall. To soothe her nerves, she inhaled deeply a couple of times. Sie West das Eier Eltern hier waren sie so unterstützen und das Naruto direkt vor der Tür wartet. They refused him entry, citing something about causing distractions. The instructors who would be reviewing her performance today stepped inside. They were 3 in number, each severe in demeanor and gazing down at her from the uppermost seats. Twilight's nerves came back with a vengeance. It felt as if they had already deemed her unworthy of the school. Doing this is within my capabilities. I'm able to accomplish this. Twilight kept her cool by mentally reciting the mantra. Miss Sparkle, are you prepared for the exam? She asked her, the Lady Unicorn. Before she nodded back to the gray mare, Twilight swallowed the lump in her throat. The side door flew open with a bang, making Twilight jump. As she turned to confront the latest disruption, she was met with the view of a wooden cart. The cart was packed to capacity with straw, and in the middle of it lay a massive purple egg adorned with green specks. The side of the cart featured a caricature of the egg in its original state and then after it had hatched. What astonished her the most was what would emerge from the egg. A dragon. They expected her to magically hatch a dragon egg. This is beyond my capabilities. This is beyond my capabilities. Twilight began to panic. De grave stoot sprach Miss Sparkle, one immer du bereit bist. With some reluctance, Twilight nodded and subsequently focused on the job before her. She went to bring forth her magic. Her attention was directed to establishing a connection with the well of strength within her and channeling that energy to her horn. She sensed it starting to flow to reach her horn, and then to fizzle out in a pathetic manner. Twilight's eyes grew large. Oh no, she nearly cried at the abrupt severing of her connection, and likely would have if not for the soothing influence that started to permeate her thoughts. Naruto dacht se basich. Images surfaced due to the feeling, which she and Naruto often experienced together. When they meditated, this was the feeling they would experience. It was a simple solution that she had forgotten, but she restrained the impulse to slam her hoof against her face. Taking a deep breath, Twilight sat on the floor and closed her eyes, starting to breathe in a steady rhythm. After a while, she succeeded in reaching her center, her magic. It was amusing that most pawnees thought meditation was solely about clearing the mind. Twilight slowly brought forth her magic. She had a vague awareness that one of the teachers was making cutting remarks at her for taking too long. She concentrated on the test itself while her magic coalesced in her horn. She had to use her magic to will the egg to hatch as she didn't know any spells for it. Upside. What sets unicorn magic apart is that most spells cast by unicorns are governed exclusively by the caster's intent. Her desire was for a healthy, living baby dragon. She intended for the egg to hatch, not break. Her magic ignited. The egg started to move, and a cracking noise was heard. A small clawed hand emerged from the shell. As the little dragon tugged at the tough protective casing that kept it from the world, another soon joined it. Twilight pushed a little more magic toward the egg, causing more cracks to emerge. As the little firebreather completed the last part of the journey out, the walls crumbled. It would be easy to label him as cute. He had a pudgy body, a big head, and large eyes, and he was sucking on the tip of his tail. Twilight reined in her magic, preparing to confront the instructors. Only to be taken aback by a loud bang that shook the windows. The ponies in the room received no more than a squeak as a warning before Twilight's control went away. A rose-colored aura of magic surrounded the young unicorn filly. An errant bolt struck the instructors, causing them to start levitating. Another strike from Moonbeam and Night Sky turned them into a plant. As the now uncontrolled magic coursed through her body, she let out a wail. Twilight. Naruto had broken in and was currently racing toward her across the room. The moment the bewhiskered boy made contact with the aura of energy surrounding the filly, things escalated from bad to worse. The magic that had been impacting the other ponies in the room diminished. As they regained their bearings, they turned to face a sight that inspired both awe and horror. The school professors were awed by the level of magic displayed before them. Energy formed a sphere in a double helix configuration. A tiny nova formed from the rosy, hued magic of Twilight and Naruto's cinnabar. Twilight parents experienced only fear, not towards the foals but for them. The eyes of the children glowed like white orbs of power. They were screaming silently with their mouths locked open. Night Sky charged ahead, determined to break them out of this fit of hysterical magic, but crashed into a barrier. He quickly recovered from the dizziness caused by the impact. Twilight. Toughest. You must shake it off. Night Sky shouted at the children, trying to break through the fog that divided them from reality. What is happening here? With a voice that commanded respect, Princess Celestia had just stepped into the classroom. As she looked at the two youngsters, she felt her face go pale. Oh no, get away from them now. The princess approached the sphere as those in the room followed her orders. An orange fire of energy engulfed Celestia's horn, and a bright light flared as the air was pierced by a crack. As the ponies regained their sight, they noticed that neither the princess nor the fools were present. As she started to dread the worst for her daughter and the boy who had become part of their family, Moonbeam fell apart in tears. Pause. Celestia was worried. No, worried was an understatement for the emotions coursing through the Sun Princess. Celestia was filled with dread for these young ones. The unicorns present at that moment might not have noticed it, but Celestia sensed the darkness emanating from the sphere. Another force was at play, akin to the madness that had seized her sister's heart so many years prior. Celestia was determined not to allow another 2 innocent lives to be lost to the schemes of demons. Celestia leaned her horn against the energy prison that confined the young ones. The princess recited a spell she hadn't invoked for hundreds of years, and as she floated through a void, she lost all sensation of the ground beneath her. Celestia awoke to find herself in a forest. The trees loomed above the spires of her castle. A loud crash echoed from further within the woods, and she realized that was her destination. She took off and soared toward the sounds of battle. It was even worse than her fears. A demon existed, but it was no trivial imp. This being represented a deity of spite and malevolence, one that even Discord would think twice about playing with. Pitiful whelps. For how long do you think you can keep me from doing what I want? My freedom will come in due time. Your bodies will serve as my puppets. I will allow you to see and feel what happens, but you will not be able to stop it. You will observe your bodies butchering everyone you love. Muahahat. A vulpan creature. An enormous fox. It boasted 9 enormous tails that devastated the terrain with every impact. Crimson energy, burning and boiling, radiated from it in waves that collided with another force. A wall of purple magic resisted the vile energy, much like seaside cliffs hold back ocean waves. Celestia glanced down and saw Twilight fending off the creature's advances. As she carried out this task, the focus on her face was a source of shame for many of the royal mages. Aber das war nicht richtig, Twilight sollt nicht die Einzige hier sein. The moment Celestia finished that thought, golden chains manifested. The chains fell down like rain, impelling the fox's hide and linking its tails. God. Ozamunki verflucht sayst du? Yelled the fox. Celestia turned her gaze toward the origin of the chains and spotted Naruto. She recognized that it was time to do something, as his face was twisted with tension. Drawing on her considerable reserves of magic, the Sun Princess unleashed a massive fireball onto the beast from above. Tufel. On this day, you shall not find freedom. Using her royal Canterlot voice, she shouted. With her horn aimed at the squirming demon, magic started to gather at its tip again. You will not find mercy either. Before barking the final word in the spell sequence, Celestia growled. Purification magic shot out like bolts, striking the fox that remained ensnared. Do you believe I will disappear, godling? I am the legendary QB Invincible. The QB displayed its summoning power in front of its muzzle, manifesting as a black energy sphere. The QB's most powerful assault, Imuri. However, before he could complete its formation, additional golden chains coiled around his muzzle, locking it shut. Before it destabilized, a purple energy shield enveloped the Imuri, nullifying most of the explosion. Uitidich alleen in der etten welt gelebt, attest du een bedrohung dargesteld. Yet we find ourselves in the thoughts of these youths. Young individuals who desire nothing but your annihilation. Therefore, I shall not let them down. As she rushed at the beast, Celestia shouted. Her body soon radiated the same golden flames as the sun. The QB plummeted to the earth, its shape oscillating between that of a solid and a gas. It glared at the Sun Princess, who had thwarted its escape. Celestia walked up to the demon, who was now broken. It would soon disappear, leaving her and the foals to claim victory, but until that time came. Thus you have succeeded in cleansing me. It was the fox who told her. Its gaze was directed at her, but it observed as the 2 kids came up to the princess from behind. However, I will not leave without a fight. Delight in my ultimate curse. With that, the remainder of the demon shattered into vaporous energy and surged ahead. Celestia jumped into the air to evade the assault, but the screams that reached her ears made her aware that she was not the intended target. She hurried to the side of the foals and started channeling her magic into them, purifying as much of the curse as she could. She already saw it begin to take effect. Their shapes were changing, transforming into that of the monsters. No, she would not permit it to occur. Although she was unable to prevent the change, she had the ability to modify its end result. The young ones were consumed by the sun so that the Enu could be forged. Pause. Princess Celestia, the sovereign of Equestria, sun goddess, and a maternal figure for many ponies, gazed down at her most recent failure. Oh, she had managed to change the curse's ultimate manifestation, but that didn't justify anything. It should not have reached them in the first place. Her duty was to shield them, but she did not succeed. Huffer output Inlich Webe Luna.